Humans, in my opinion, are not intended to be widgets, locked into a sort of just-in-time mentality. That's for the ball bearings and the little circuits. It's not for humans. If we become locked into repetitive display behaviour, merely for the purposes of face or for a sales target, I think we risk tumbling into this impersonal trap. And then the fact is you do risk neglecting the big one, the bigger relationships, the ones that accidentally cross your path, the truly personal encounters on offer, which can be really something, and you know when you've had them. They are something special. Whereas for many people, the kindness of strangers is still the most envied characteristic in communities. This has been found in research because it's the strongest indicator of people's well-being, their sheer pleasure in existence. This is a great insight offered in a wonderful little book I interviewed on last year by a man called Dr. Adam Phillips. He's a London psychotherapist, a bit of a glamour psychotherapist, and his collaborator called Barbara Taylor. It's called On Kindness. It's a little book. It didn't sort of fell thousands of trees, and you might like to seek it out. It's a really lovely book. It's a history of kindness down through the ages, and it makes the point that kindness has been a little bit overlooked in our more recent times. Whereas the Christian notion of caritas functioned as a sort of social glue, a social cement for centuries. From about the 16th century onwards, that rule, love thy neighbour as thyself, really came under challenge from what might be known as competitive individualism. And in fact, in this long boom that we had, that has ended so spectacularly in many ways, these two authors believed that if anything, there was such a roll-on about looking after self and maximising self that people started to wonder whether kindness was a little bit bogus. Now, I don't know whether I saw that as much in Australia. I thought that was quite a challenging thing that they said, which it would be sort of a truly dreadful commentary on us if that was the case. But this is how they wrote it. Kindness is an experience that we've been unable to give up on. The unromantic kindness which encourages a feeling of aliveness as compatible with, indeed integral to, a feeling of vulnerability, creating the kind of intimacy, the kind of involvement with other people that we both fear and crave. That is, it's kindness fundamentally that makes life seem worth living, and that everything that is against kindness is an assault on our hope. It's a beautiful summary, I think, from these two authors. Hard to better. And you know what really bothers me? That the really smart people in this world are starting to work all this out about linkage and about quality of life and about impersonal conduct and about favouring the personal. They're starting to manage this apparently never stop 24/7 world, and they're making it work for them. Because after all, the human community has felt many times in its history that things are moving much faster than they want it to. Plato talked about precisely this, urging people getting away from the crowd. St. Benedict, he was Benedict then, backed in the 6th century, at the fall of the Roman Empire, when all was chaos, set up groups of people with a sort of rule of life based on a balanced existence that is still being tapped by thousands of people around the world to the present day. So, I mean, people do adapt. That is exactly what we're designed to do, to adapt to our world. And I want the venerable little Aussie battler to adapt like this too. I don't think he and she are at the moment. I don't think they're getting the best of what's on offer from this world, and I presume that's exactly why you're having things like these Gosford Talks, to try to think this through. Because some of us are, definitely, according to Hugh Mackay, moving forward, to use the phrase of the moment, about 5 to 8 years ago, he started noting, he said, that there was a group who were genuinely had stopped panicking because he'd spent about the previous 15 years, because I'd interviewed him about once a year, he did that Mackay report, being very pessimistic about people's capacity to feel they had their head above water. There was just so much coming down the pipeline in their work, in their home lives, in the community around them. And he used to, in fact, one of my colleagues said, look, I'm sick of having him on, he's so pessimistic. I don't feel like that. And I said, well, he is reading the whole population, he's trying to read the whole population. And then I noticed, I think it was about 5-6 years ago, he started to notice that there were this group who had started to say, hey, we feel we're steadying. Now, there were characteristics, they were all net connected. And it was quite important, this business about being connected to the net. They were all doing quite well from the long boom at the time. They were starting to believe they could re-tribalise, as he put it, get a little more control over their lives. I think they'd stopped thinking they could control it, but they had started to believe that the pace was such that they could manage. And they could use the technology, this was where they had started to really change, to follow through on this hardwired trait in humans to find groupings that enrich their lives. And those of us who do care about fairness in Australia, and I would warrant there's a fair bit of that here in Gosford, cannot avert our gaze from this gulf that's opening up, in my view, between us, between people who feel that they are developing a mastery and some element of control over their lives, and those who don't. And the majority, I would suggest to you, are those who don't. And therefore, their own sense of quality of life is very much reduced. I don't know how many of you that represents. It may represent fewer of you than you think, because by virtue of stepping out and doing something like this, I suspect it puts you in the category of people who've just started to believe it's worth doing precisely that. I mean, after all, how do you think elites develop over different era? It's not just a question of material benefit or money or privilege, although that undoubtedly helps. It's surely a sense that they feel at least partially capable of standing back from their world, reconfiguring their place in it, and getting onto the front foot. To me, I've thought quite a lot about this because I watch a workplace like the ABC, and you watch the people who can adapt and you watch the people who can't. It can be very vivid. But that sense of thinking, I'm on the front foot, at least for sort of 20 minutes of the day, I think probably means you are not constantly, irrevocably being pulled and pushed by forces that you feel are always outside your control. So I want more Australians to feel they can tilt at that group. Now, I don't feel in control all the time. I don't want you to think for a moment. I promise you I don't. I've got 2 children and 2 stepchildren. I put a lot of priority on friends, and I've got a husband who's very ill at the moment. So I don't feel that I'm massively in control of events, though I can sense myself making some progress, partly because I've stopped yearning for control. Very Buddhist. I sat beside a wise old European psychiatrist at a dinner a couple of years back. I remember this, and we were making small talk. It was an enjoyable talk, but he had that sort of old world about him, and he sort of said people are overwhelmed by things, and he started to chat, and in the amount of information coming down, and they can't keep up. And I sort of said, but young people don't view technology the way we do, and I think that they're not as hand-wringing as we are, and so on. And he just sort of put his hand up and said, People are overwhelmed in that sort of authoritative male way. And I shut up because I thought, yes, he's probably right. People are overwhelmed more than not. And I just think I think there's lots of evidence to suggest that, and I haven't decided to collate it all tonight. I could have, but I thought, no, I won't. I think you know all that. I thought I might talk about what seems to be possible for the people who decide that it's worth trying to cut through that sense of being overwhelmed.